Have you ever wondered why a man who once seemed distracted by the noise of the world suddenly becomes consumed by the thought of a single woman? Most people believe it is beauty, charm, or chance that ensnares him, but the truth is far more ancient, woven into the unconscious itself. What you think makes him retreat may, in fact, be what makes him draw closer. Carl Jung believed that the unconscious always seeks balance, and the feminine has always been the mirror through which the masculine discovers his own hidden soul. To understand this is to understand the secret architecture of obsession. A man does not become obsessed with a woman because of superficial qualities, he becomes obsessed when something in her awakens his forgotten archetypes. She becomes the living embodiment of the anima, the inner feminine that dwells within his psyche but lies dormant, unacknowledged. When he encounters her, it is not merely her smile or her presence he sees. It is his own soul calling to him, demanding that he reckon with what he has neglected. He cannot name this force, but he feels it as hunger, as restlessness, as a pull he cannot resist. Some women unknowingly trigger this archetypal response. They embody depth rather than performance. They radiate mystery rather than explanation. Their silence speaks in symbols, their presence awakens his shadow. And in her, he sees not a possession to be owned, but a mirror to his inner world. You, perhaps unknowingly, have felt the power of this, when your stillness draws more than your speech, when your boundaries ignite more desire than your yielding. This is no accident. It is Jung's law of opposites, the unconscious always seeks what is missing, and in you he finds the missing piece. Imagine this, he believes he is in control, that desire is his choice. Yet, the truth is crueler and more exquisite. The man is governed not by reason but by archetypes. He is obsessed when you embody what his ego resists, when your independence reminds him of his own dependency, when your mystery reflects his unspoken fear of insignificance, when your grace unveils his clumsy search for meaning. He is captured not by the surface of you but by the unconscious resonance that shakes him awake. For obsession is not born in comfort, it thrives in tension. If you give all of yourself too quickly, he has no space to project his longing. But when you live anchored in your essence, you leave him no choice but to wrestle with the polarity you embody. He both fears and desires this confrontation, because in you he sees not only the woman before him but the parts of himself he has abandoned. And that paradox, fear entwined with desire, is the crucible of obsession. It is in these moments that your energy ceases to be personal. It becomes symbolic, mythic, the way a goddess is both human and untouchable. You become more than a partner, you become initiation. He is drawn into you the way pilgrims are drawn to sacred fire, not because they expect to own it, but because they cannot resist its light. The obsessive pull is not about you conforming to his desires, it is about you awakening his unconscious through the integrity of your own being. And so the question is not, how do I make him obsessed, but, how do I embody the archetype that awakens him? For when you inhabit your depth, your boundaries, your mystery, you cease to chase validation. You become the catalyst of his inner transformation. That is the secret, obsession is never about tactics, it is always about depth. Obsession begins its quiet ascent when polarity is born between what a man consciously believes he wants and what he unconsciously craves. Jung taught that the psyche is forever pulled between opposites, and in this tension lies transformation. The woman who awakens obsession does not satisfy his conscious list of preferences, she disrupts it. She unsettles him by embodying a quality that his ego has long denied. He may say he desires simplicity, yet he cannot look away from complexity. He may imagine he wants comfort, yet it is the woman who stirs unease within him that he cannot release from his mind. This paradox unfolds because she carries the weight of archetypes greater than herself. Her presence is not linear, it is symbolic. She becomes the maiden and the queen, the sanctuary and the storm. In her laughter, he hears freedom that he has not tasted in years. In her silence, he senses the abyss that forces him to face himself. Every movement of her being becomes a mirror to his hidden longings, and the more he resists, the more he is bound. For resistance feeds obsession as much as desire does, and what he denies in you becomes what consumes him. Many women misunderstand this truth. They believe that giving more will secure him, that chasing harder will prove worthiness. Yet the opposite unfolds: when you surrender yourself too quickly, his projections collapse. He no longer sees the mirror of his unconscious, he sees only what he already knows, and what is known cannot obsess. It is the mystery, the boundary, the depth unspoken that ignites the fire. When you withhold not out of manipulation but out of self-respect, you leave room for the unconscious to speak. In that silence, his own longing rises louder than your words. Consider how men chase shadows of their own making. The woman who does not bend easily forces him to reckon with his hunger. Her refusal to be consumed makes him want to devour. Her independence does not push him away, it awakens his ancient need to merge with what seems untouchable. This is the law of opposites again: the more she affirms her wholeness without him, the more he feels the ache to belong to her world. He does not realize it, but in his pursuit he is not seeking her alone. He is seeking the part of himself that feels alive only in her presence. And here lies the secret: obsession is born not when you try to become what he wants, but when you embody what he lacks. If his life is chaos, your stillness becomes his anchor. If his life is controlled, your wildness becomes his liberation. If his soul is weary, your laughter becomes the echo of forgotten vitality. Each quality you carry awakens in him the archetype he has neglected, and once touched, he cannot retreat without feeling the emptiness sharpen. To you, this may feel like power, but it is not control, it is resonance. You do not force him to think of you, his unconscious demands it. You do not plant yourself in his imagination, his own projections crown you there. And though he may resist, he cannot escape the pull. For when a woman becomes the mirror of his denied self, she ceases to be merely a person. She becomes initiation, the threshold he must cross, the dream that refuses to die. It is not about games. It is about depth. It is about inhabiting your own essence so fully that he feels both confronted and compelled. For the woman who knows how to dwell in her archetype is not chasing obsession, she is birthing it in the very fabric of his unconscious. And in that space, his mind cannot rest. The dynamic of obsession deepens when the shadow enters the stage. Jung warned that what we repress does not vanish, it waits. A man may project confidence, strength, even detachment, but beneath these masks lies his shadow, the vulnerable child, the fearful lover, the unacknowledged dreamer. When he encounters a woman who unconsciously embodies the qualities he has cast aside, the shadow stirs. And once awakened, it refuses silence. She does not need to point it out, nor expose it directly. Her very existence speaks to the hidden corridors of his psyche, and the result is both terrifying and irresistible. You have seen this paradox unfold. A man who swore he valued logic finds himself haunted by the woman whose intuition disarms him. One who prided himself on control is drawn helplessly to the woman who embodies freedom. The tension between his outer persona and his inner void becomes unbearable, and the image of her fills that space. She is not simply a person, she is the embodiment of what he secretly craves yet fears. This is why his obsession feels irrational, why it consumes his thoughts even when circumstances advise otherwise. He is not merely desiring her, he is fighting to integrate the parts of himself that she awakens. The woman who triggers this does so not by effort but by authenticity. She does not contort herself to his liking, she embodies her own polarity. She may be serene where he is chaotic, or fiery where he is stagnant. In her self-possession, he encounters what he abandoned in himself. And though he may not understand it consciously, his body, his emotions, his dreams betray him. He begins to seek her presence like a man seeking oxygen, because without it, he feels the echo of what he has lost. This is why obsession cannot be manufactured by shallow strategies. You cannot trick the unconscious. You cannot mimic depth and expect lasting resonance. Obsession only arises when a woman stands as an authentic archetype, unmoved by performance, rooted in her essence. This is not manipulation, it is embodiment. It is the refusal to diminish yourself for the comfort of another. In that refusal, you become dangerous, not because you threaten him, but because you awaken him. And awakening always comes with longing. Watch closely, and you will see the signs. He lingers in silence after you leave, hearing your voice echo in his mind. He scrolls through his memories of you, searching for patterns that explain his unrest. He reacts with both hunger and defensiveness, pulled closer even as he fears the depth he sees in your eyes. To him, it feels like obsession with you, but the deeper truth is that he is obsessed with the self you awaken within him. That is the secret the unconscious hides. His pursuit is not of you alone, it is of the wholeness he feels only when you are near. And yet, the woman who understands this truth holds immense power. Not the power to manipulate, but the power to remain sovereign. She knows that her role is not to chase or to prove, but to exist as a mirror of his unspoken depths. The moment she abandons herself to secure his attention, the spell breaks. But when she honors her own essence, when she remains a sanctuary to herself first, his obsession grows, not because she feeds it, but because she refuses to extinguish the fire that his unconscious has already lit. Thus, obsession is not merely attraction, it is alchemy. It is the meeting of shadow and light, of projection and reality, of hunger and boundary. And once ignited, it burns through the walls of his ego until he is left staring into the truth of himself, with you as the doorway he cannot stop approaching. Obsession is sustained by the archetypal dance of distance and closeness, of approach and retreat. Jung understood that desire thrives in polarity, and when polarity collapses into sameness, passion fades. The woman who ignites obsession does not erase this polarity, she magnifies it. She embodies both intimacy and separateness, inviting him into her world yet never abandoning her own. This paradox, where he feels both connected and excluded, feeds his psyche like fire feeds on air. He longs for her not because she has dissolved into him, but because she remains sovereign even as she touches him. Consider the nature of myth. In every great story, the hero is compelled to chase what he cannot easily obtain. The Grail is hidden, the treasure guarded, the goddess cloaked in mystery. It is not cruelty that fuels his quest, it is the sense that her essence cannot be seized in a single gesture. She is more than a fleeting desire, she is an ordeal, a test, an initiation. When a man encounters a woman who carries herself as myth rather than mere presence, he feels this compulsion. He cannot reduce her to a conquest, because her being expands beyond the confines of ownership. And so he circles, returns, obsesses, drawn deeper into the labyrinth of her presence. The woman who becomes obsession is not loud in her power. She does not need to proclaim it, nor explain herself endlessly. Her power is silent, elemental, like the moon pulling at the tides. She knows that obsession grows in the space between revelation and concealment. She does not reveal everything, not out of manipulation, but out of reverence for her own depths. She lets him feel the weight of her absence as much as the intoxication of her nearness. In doing so, she awakens his instinct to pursue, not because she demands it, but because his soul cannot rest without the chase. Yet there is danger in misunderstanding this. Many believe withholding love or playing games is the path, but games are shallow and collapse under scrutiny. True obsession is not born from trickery but from authenticity. It is the paradox of being fully present yet never diminished, of offering connection without surrendering sovereignty. It is the mystery of a woman who knows her value so deeply that she does not fear his withdrawal, because her essence does not depend on his recognition. This independence, this quiet unavailability, creates the tension that his psyche interprets as longing. Watch how he responds. His words may speak of reason, but his actions betray compulsion. He finds excuses to remain in her orbit, his thoughts return to her image in moments of silence, his dreams echo her face. He is restless, haunted by the sense that she carries something essential he cannot define. She does not remind him of every other woman, she reminds him of the forgotten self he abandoned long ago. And the more she remains unshaken by his pull, the deeper his obsession carves into him. The woman who knows this truth does not weaponize it. She does not seek to dominate him through his weakness, for true power needs no dominance. She simply remains aligned with herself, refusing to collapse her world into his. And in that refusal, he is compelled to expand his world to meet hers. This is how obsession transforms from fleeting infatuation into an archetypal bond. It is not about possession but initiation. She is not the prize at the end of his journey, she is the journey itself. In this way, obsession becomes less about the woman herself and more about the masculine psyche confronting its own incompleteness. Yet, to him, she remains the figure he cannot release, the image that lingers in every silence, the gravity that shapes his movements. The spiral of obsession intensifies when longing collides with frustration. Jung wrote that desire often grows strongest in the presence of obstacles, for the unconscious feeds on tension. A man who has full access to what he craves soon grows complacent, but when he meets a woman who embodies both invitation and boundary, his desire sharpens into fixation. It is not cruelty that fuels this, but the recognition that her essence cannot be seized all at once. He must return, again and again, drawn by the paradox of closeness that never dissolves into possession. In such dynamics, the woman becomes the embodiment of what philosophers called the eternal other. She is not an extension of him, nor a mirror that bends to flatter. She is a sovereign axis around which his psyche orbits. Her refusal to collapse her being into his expectations is precisely what compels him. He cannot master her, and this lack of mastery unsettles his ego. Yet that very unsettledness awakens a deeper truth. In her, he encounters his unfinished self. Each moment with her is both fulfillment and challenge, soothing his hunger while reminding him of the hunger's endlessness. This is why obsession is rarely rational. A man may tell himself she is not his type, that he should move on, that logic demands distance. Yet his unconscious does not obey such commands. The more he resists, the more she infiltrates his mind. He catches her image in strangers' faces, her voice echoes in silence, her essence colors his perception of other women. It is not she who intrudes, his psyche calls her forth, because she represents the part of his inner world that he has not integrated. And until he confronts that truth, he cannot release her. You, as the woman, feel this pull even if you do not intend it. Your independence, your laughter, your refusal to shrink, these qualities live in him as dormant archetypes. When you embody them without apology, you activate the parts of him he has denied. He cannot name why, but he feels more alive near you, as though your presence stitches together fragments of his forgotten self. This vitality terrifies him, because it threatens the comfort of his persona, yet it also enslaves him, because he cannot bear to lose it. It is crucial to understand that this is not about manipulation. To attempt to engineer obsession by withholding affection or staging illusions is to play with shadows without depth. Real obsession cannot be manufactured, it can only be evoked through authenticity. A woman who lives her truth, who embodies both softness and strength, light and shadow, becomes a magnet not by trickery, but by resonance. She is the archetype itself, not the performance of it. And because the unconscious is never fooled, only truth has the power to bind. As his obsession deepens, it is not always comfortable. He may pull away, frightened by the intensity she evokes. He may vacillate between pursuit and retreat, unable to reconcile the force she awakens in him. But even in retreat, she does not fade. His distance only amplifies her presence in his psyche, because what is unresolved becomes unforgettable. He does not realize it, but his avoidance is proof of her power. She has touched something in him that demands transformation, and transformation is never painless. The woman who knows this does not chase his retreat. She does not beg for his consistency or diminish her essence to soothe his fear. She understands that his obsession is not about her comfort but his initiation. To stand in her truth is to let him wrestle with his own. And in that tension, his longing grows sharper. The deeper layers of obsession emerge when the anima, the inner feminine Jung described, fully awakens in a man's unconscious. Every man carries within him an image of the feminine, shaped by his mother, his experiences, his wounds, and his longings. Yet this inner image is often fragmented, incomplete, or distorted by repression. When he encounters a woman who reflects that hidden image, the resonance is electric. It feels fated, inexplicable, as though destiny itself has arranged the meeting. He believes he is obsessed with her, but in truth, he is encountering his own soul through her presence. This explains why he may idealize her beyond reason. She becomes larger than life in his mind, the embodiment of everything he has ever desired yet never found. Her imperfections blur under the projection of his anima, and he mistakes his inner hunger for her essence. This projection is not her responsibility to maintain, yet it fuels the compulsive grip of his desire. He is not only longing for her, he is longing for wholeness. To him, she feels like home and mystery at once, both sanctuary and enigma. The paradox makes him restless, unable to detach. For the woman, the danger lies in confusing his projection with true intimacy. When a man projects his anima onto her, he is not yet seeing her fully, he is seeing the reflection of his own psyche. Yet the very fact that she can hold this mirror is what compels him. Obsession grows strongest when the woman remains rooted in herself while allowing him to encounter his projections. If she collapses under the weight of his idealization, striving to live up to an image that is not hers, she loses her essence, and the spell breaks. But if she remains authentic, holding her boundaries, she becomes both the mirror and the mystery. This duality is why some women trigger obsession without trying. They live in alignment with their essence, neither inflating themselves to meet expectations nor diminishing themselves to fit into a man's comfort. They embody the anima archetype simply by existing in truth. She laughs without apology, and he feels vitality stir. She withdraws into her own world, and he feels the ache of absence sharpen his desire. She does not chase his attention, she directs her energy inward, and that inner sovereignty makes him orbit her gravitational field. Such obsession is not gentle. It pulls him into inner conflict. His ego resists what his unconscious demands. He may feel fear, even resentment, because she exposes his incompleteness. Yet this is precisely what binds him tighter. He cannot forget her, because forgetting her means returning to his fragmented state. He cannot let go, because letting go feels like abandoning the very part of himself she awakened. And so she becomes not just a woman but a threshold, between who he has been and who he must become. For you, the task is not to feed his projection but to protect your essence. The obsession is not proof of his love, it is proof of his unconscious stirring. If he is strong enough, he will face the transformation she evokes. If he is weak, he will run, though even in distance her shadow will haunt him. Either way, her role is not to chase but to remain. To hold the paradox of presence and mystery, to embody her truth so deeply that his psyche has no choice but to confront itself. In this lies the true power of the feminine archetype. Not in manipulation, not in begging for his devotion, but in being the vessel through which his unconscious awakens. And once awakened, he cannot escape. His obsession is not. Obsession matures into something darker, more consuming, when the archetype of the forbidden is stirred. Jung reminded us that the psyche is magnetized not only toward light but toward what it is denied. A man becomes most haunted by the woman who embodies what he cannot fully have. Whether it is her untouchable independence, her sacred boundaries, or her refusal to collapse into his control, the inaccessibility itself intensifies the pull. What is withheld becomes mythic, and what is mythic becomes unforgettable. In his unconscious, she becomes the symbol of initiation, both a danger and a promise. He is drawn to her the way fire is drawn to oxygen, knowing it could consume him but unable to retreat. Every boundary she upholds is experienced as both rejection and invitation. When she says no, he hears the echo of a deeper yes he has not yet earned. When she withdraws into her own orbit, he feels the hollowness of his own incompleteness, and that hollowness drives him back toward her with greater urgency. This is why his obsession feels cyclical. The more he is denied, the more compelled he becomes to return. For the woman, this paradox is her strength. She does not need to create barriers artificially. Authentic boundaries are enough. When she honors her own time, her own values, her own rhythm, she communicates a truth that his unconscious cannot ignore. She is not an object to be absorbed, but a sovereign being. And sovereignty is magnetic precisely because it is rare. Most bend under pressure, seeking approval through sacrifice. But the one who remains whole forces him to confront his own lack of wholeness. He mistakes this confrontation for longing, and the longing becomes obsession. Notice how his behavior betrays this truth. He may grow agitated when she is silent, because her absence mirrors his own inner void. He may grow possessive when she sets limits, because her refusal to dissolve into him forces him to face his hunger. He may even oscillate between desire and anger, because she awakens both pleasure and pain. Yet the tension is the very thing that binds him. He is addicted not only to her presence but to the struggle she evokes within him. Without realizing it, he becomes enslaved to the rhythm of distance and return, a rhythm she controls not by force but by remaining anchored in herself. This is where many falter. They confuse obsession with validation, seeking to keep him enthralled as proof of worth. But true power does not beg for obsession, it understands its nature. His fixation is not proof that she is enough. It is proof that she has awakened archetypes he cannot silence. And so the wise woman does not chase his devotion, nor does she shrink to soothe his fear. She simply embodies her truth, allowing the unconscious to do its work. The forbidden, the unattainable, the sovereign, these are not games but archetypes. When a woman embodies them authentically, she steps into the role of the initiator. To him, she is both muse and torment, salvation and trial. And though he may resist, though he may attempt to escape, the mark is already made. His dreams will carry her image, his silence will replay her voice, his restless longing will circle back to her presence. For the unconscious does not release easily what it deems essential. Thus obsession becomes the crucible in which he wrestles with himself. It is not she who binds him, he binds himself, tethered to the mirror she holds. And until he integrates the shadow she awakens, he will remain caught in her orbit, drawn back again and again, unable to break free. Obsession takes on its most profound form when it shifts from desire of the flesh to hunger of the spirit. Jung often spoke of individuation as the ultimate task of the soul, the uniting of conscious and unconscious, masculine and feminine, shadow and light. A man may believe he is chasing a woman, but in truth he is chasing the lost fragments of his own being. When she embodies the archetype that completes the polarity within him, she becomes less a lover than a threshold. He feels not only passion but destiny, not only attraction but compulsion, as though without her, his journey cannot continue. This is why obsession feels eternal even in fleeting encounters. She may have spoken to him once, looked into his eyes for a moment, yet the image lingers like fire on the skin. It is not the length of the meeting that matters, it is the depth of archetypal resonance. A glance can awaken what years of searching could not. She carries within her the seed of transformation, and his psyche recognizes it instantly. He cannot rationalize this recognition, but his soul burns with it. And so she becomes the figure he cannot expel, the ghost he welcomes in every silence. For the woman, the danger is to mistake this projection for love. Obsession is powerful, but it is not yet devotion. It is the stirring of the unconscious, the recognition of what he has not integrated. Some men will transform under this pull, rising to meet the archetype she awakens. Others will falter, consumed by longing yet unwilling to face their own shadows. In both cases, the obsession remains, but its outcome depends not on her performance but on his strength. She cannot heal him by surrendering herself. She can only hold her essence, allowing him the chance to grow or to fall. And so her task is to embody the paradox of intimacy without collapse. She offers connection but never abandons her independence. She allows resonance but never dissolves into projection. This balance is not cruelty, it is the soil in which real desire takes root. For a man does not remain obsessed with what he can easily consume. He remains obsessed with what awakens him, what eludes him, what challenges him to expand. Her sovereignty is not a wall but a fire. He cannot extinguish it, and so he is drawn to it endlessly. The imagery is as old as myth. The knight chases the vision of the Grail not because it is easy but because it is elusive. The wanderer longs for the goddess not because she yields, but because she commands reverence. This is the feminine archetype in its most exalted form, not submissive, not begging, but radiant in its own gravity. And when a man encounters this radiance, he is no longer free. His conscious mind may resist, but his unconscious binds him to her, weaving her image into his dreams, his fears, his desires. And yet, the woman who understands this does not abuse it. She does not twist his obsession into a game of control. She recognizes that obsession is his burden, not her currency. To exploit it would be to diminish her archetype into manipulation, and manipulation always shatters the spell. Instead, she honors her own path, knowing that his obsession is simply a reflection of her resonance. She neither inflates nor diminishes herself for his sake. She simply is, and in being, she awakens the deepest forces of his psyche. This is the final secret: obsession is never truly about the woman alone. It is about the archetypes she embodies, the shadows she awakens, the forgotten self she reflects. She is the flame, but the fire burns because his soul was dry kindling long before she appeared. And so he remains tethered, consumed not only by her presence but by the transformation she demands of him. Obsession reaches its most paradoxical stage when it becomes entwined with transformation. Jung taught that no encounter is accidental. The figures who stir the deepest fires within us are often those who awaken the path of individuation. For a man, the woman who haunts his thoughts is not merely a romantic interest, she is the symbolic threshold between who he has been and who he must become. This is why he cannot forget her, why even distance or silence only intensifies her presence. She is not simply a lover in his imagination, she is the embodiment of his unfinished becoming. At this point, he experiences obsession not only as desire but as compulsion, even suffering. He oscillates between longing and resistance, between wanting to possess her and fearing the depth she reveals. His conscious ego may attempt to rationalize the connection, to reduce it to attraction or circumstance. Yet the unconscious resists reduction. It knows her as archetype, as anima, as the mirror of the wholeness he has neglected. And so she becomes inescapable. He does not merely want her, he needs what she represents, the fragment of his soul that only her presence can summon. The woman who evokes this often feels the tension herself. She senses his intensity, the way his gaze lingers too long, the way his energy sharpens in her presence. Yet she must remember, his obsession is not proof of her obligation. It is not her role to suit the storm she has awakened, nor to shrink herself for his comfort. If she bends to accommodate his need, she risks dissolving the very archetype that made him restless in the first place. His obsession is born of her sovereignty, and her sovereignty must remain intact if the fire is to keep burning. This is where her greatest power lies, in restraint, in mystery, in self-possession. She knows that obsession thrives in polarity, in the distance between two worlds. She lets him approach but does not collapse. She allows intimacy but keeps her own sanctuary intact. And in this balance, his longing grows sharper. He cannot conquer her, and so he is compelled to confront himself. She becomes both mirror and challenge, forcing him into the work of shadow integration whether he chooses it consciously or not. Consider how myth portrays this dynamic. The hero who pursues the goddess is transformed not because he wins her but because the pursuit changes him. She is the catalyst, the force that compels him to face trials he would otherwise avoid. Likewise, the man obsessed is not enslaved by her cruelty but by his own unconscious need to grow. She is not a trap but a threshold. And though he may resent her distance or fear her depth, he cannot release her, because to release her would be to abandon his own initiation. For the woman, there is liberation in this recognition. She understands that obsession is never about being more beautiful, more accommodating, more pleasing. It is about embodying her truth so completely that she becomes archetype. She does not have to force herself into his mind, his own psyche ensures she is unforgettable. Her task is only to remain aligned with her essence, to guard her boundaries with reverence, and to resist the temptation to chase validation in his obsession. Because obsession, at its root, is not love, it is awakening. It is the unconscious demanding attention, using her as the spark. Whether he rises to meet the transformation or remains trapped in longing is his journey, not hers. She does not need to heal him, to fix him, or to prove herself worthy. She only needs to stand as she is, radiant, sovereign, unshaken. In doing so, she not only triggers his obsession but reveals the timeless truth: true feminine power is not in pursuit but in presence. And now the spiral arrives at its final revelation. Obsession, when traced to its roots, is not about the woman at all, it is about the man's confrontation with himself. Jung taught that the anima, once awakened, demands integration. A man projects it outward, attaching it to the woman who seems to carry it. Yet what he truly craves is not her body, not even her affection, it is the forgotten parts of his own soul that she symbolizes. She is both muse and mirror, but the transformation belongs to him. For her, the recognition of this truth is liberation. She no longer confuses his fixation with proof of her worth, nor does she collapse into the weight of his projections. She sees clearly, his obsession is a reflection of his incompleteness, not a crown upon her head. She may inspire it, but she is not bound to it. She is free to choose whether she wishes to stand as mirror or to step aside, knowing that his longing will continue with or without her. For the unconscious does not release its chosen image easily. And here lies the ultimate paradox: the very moment she ceases to seek his obsession, she becomes most powerful in it. When she no longer measures herself by his hunger, when she releases the need to be remembered, she embodies the archetype in its purest form. She is no longer the projected anima of one man, she is the eternal feminine itself, sovereign and untouchable. Her value does not rise and fall with his pursuit. She is whole, whether he sees her or not. This detachment is not coldness but strength. She loves if she chooses, but never from lack. She gives if she wills, but never from fear of being abandoned. And in this freedom, she embodies what Jung called individuation, the union of her own inner forces, light and shadow, conscious and unconscious. She no longer plays the role of catalyst for another's transformation without first being the alchemist of her own. And when she stands in that place, she becomes unforgettable not because she clings to him, but because she has become impossible to reduce. The man who encounters her at this stage feels the full weight of the archetype. She is no longer just obsession, she is initiation and release, temptation and transcendence. He cannot own her, because she does not offer herself as possession. He cannot forget her, because forgetting her would mean forgetting himself. She becomes the echo that follows him into silence, the question that lingers when all answers fade. Yet she is not bound to his struggle. She walks her own path, knowing that true feminine power is not in being desired, but in being sovereign. And so the cycle completes. Obsession is not the end but the beginning. It is the unconscious knocking at the door of consciousness, demanding that he awaken. Whether he answers is his choice, not hers. Her role is simply to remain radiant in her essence, neither shrinking to soothe him nor inflating to enthrall him. She is the mirror, the myth, the mystery, and she is free. The woman who knows this truth no longer chases love, no longer clings to the validation of a man's obsession. She stands in her own light, unafraid of absence, unafraid of silence, unafraid of being alone. And in that very stance, she becomes most magnetic. For nothing is more irresistible than the woman who has no need to be irresistible. The woman who knows her worth doesn't chase, she chooses.